Going, Katie? Bore da pawb I mesur y mynydd. Dyma cychwyn sesiwn y bore ar y trydydd diwrnod o broses mesur y mynydd. Mae'r rheithgor yn barod a mae'r tystion yn barod I cychwyn y sesiwn y bore. Good morning and welcome to Measure the Mountain. This is the third day, the first morning session of Measure the Mountain. The citizens' jury is ready and the witnesses are ready. Today, our witnesses are Dave Horton and Hazel from Action in Caerau and Ely, Nick French from Innovate Trust, and Claire Sullivan from NEWCIS. And we're going to start this morning's session with a presentation from Dave Horton. Over to you, please, Dave.
I've got a system that works now, everyone. I can turn the speaker down while I'm speaking and we won't get any feedback. But any problems, wave your hands and I'll stop and we can try and sort it out.
Okay.
Everyone can hear me now? Brilliant stuff, good stuff. This new technological skills we have to develop, we're all struggling with a bit. It's really good to be here. Thank you for inviting us. As David says, Hazel and I work for an organisation called ACE, Action in Caerau and Ely. And we're just going to give you a really short 10-minute presentation just on some of the background. I'm going to tell you a tiny bit about Ely, about how we got the organisation set up, and in particular talk about our ethos and our values and how we work, and then just give a few examples of what that means in practice. Before, if we've got time at the end, just sharing a really quick story of what it means for an individual in terms of change in their life. Does that sound okay? Good stuff. Okay. So just by way of introduction, just a bit of a kind of mention about Ely and Caerau. Does anyone know the area at all? Yeah, we're on the west of Cardiff. Really big housing estate, about 25,000 people. Built after the First and Second World Wars, respectively, Ely and Caerau. Really thriving community that had lots of local employment. A jam and pickle factory and a paper mill, and the largest paper mill in Europe. But all that industry collapsed in the course of kind of 20 years in the 80s and 90s. And I guess there's a legacy then of kind of challenges related to unemployment. And in particular, what we're seeing now much more is kind of in-work poverty as well. So people working but still struggling to make ends meet. So lots of challenges, but a really thriving community. It's not transient, not people, lots of people moving in and out. So it's fairly stable. Lots of strong social networks and family and friendship connections, which is one of the things we're really able to kind of tap into in ACE and sort of bring to life. So why did we set ACE up? Well, some of us involved at the time were working as community workers on the Welsh Government's Communities First programme, and we were seeing some good things happen, but we were really concerned about whether that work would be sustainable beyond a single government programme, and also really keen to build something that local people themselves owned and ran and had control over, and that could represent their interests to decision makers in the city. So we set ACE up in 2011, very much with the aim of putting local people in the driving seat, and established the organisation in a way that it would be able to manage buildings, manage staff, manage big grants, and also start to generate some income through things like social enterprise. So we were very much looking at how we could get beyond just one government grant source and create something that created employment but also made money, so we could actually keep the charity sustainable, so it wasn't dependent on one grant. We go to the second slide. So this is ACE philosophy, values and approaches. So what's ACE all about? How do we work? What's our kind of unique take on the world, if you like? Well, first thing is we have really deep roots in our particular community. So we've had a long-term presence in Ely and Caerau. We have a building right in the middle of the estate, sat between Ely and Caerau on Cowbridge Road West. And more importantly than the sort of physical presence in that sense, we have a network of relationships in the estate that we've built up over many years. And that's kind of what underpins the work really and gives it its life and its kind of vibrancy. So fundamental to our work is relationships and something we call social capital. It's the relationships that exist between people within their family units, outside of their family units, and across boundaries. And we really sort of try and promote that and harness it and support it to grow. So that becomes the roots of everything we do. So people can mobilise together around issues and actually act themselves as community members. So we seek to bring people together across the kind of traditional boundaries that exist in our society. So we often do kind of intergenerational work. We've done work bringing Syrian refugee friends in and mixing people up so they're meeting people they wouldn't be coming across in everyday life. And we try and be as inclusive as possible, and work with as wide a range of people as possible. And kind of fundamental to that ethos is something that we call co-production. Has anyone heard of the term co-production? Probably, it's a bit of a buzz term. I mean, for us, what it essentially means is we work with local people as full participants in designing our services and activities, delivering our services and activities, and evaluating our services and activities. So we are very conscious and open about the fact that's the basis of all our work. That's how we work. And what does that mean in practice? Well, what we always say to our members and local people is it means that everybody has something to contribute. And that if anyone is unable to contribute, everybody loses out as a result. That's a kind of fundamental ethos. That's the message we're giving all the time. And also that everybody's contribution should be valued and celebrated and nurtured. So that's really important to us. So co-production as a kind of an ethos and a principle and an approach is fundamental to what we do. And then the other approach we're kind of interested in and that we read about and that we base our work on is something called asset-based community development. And this has come out of a real sense that our community is one that has been perceived a certain way for many years. Can you see the slides, by the way? I thought there were some slides up.
They're coming now. They're coming now.
That's great. Okay. There are some slides that go with this. I wasn't sure if you could see them. I'll carry on.
Carry on, Dave. It's fine. They're coming up now, and we'll catch up with you. Don't worry.
No worries. All right. Thanks, David. So we're on slide ACE philosophy, values, and approaches. Slide 3, I think it is. So just a word about asset-based community development. This for us comes from the sense that our community has been perceived historically as a problem that needs solving. As a place that has all kinds of problems and that people need to come from the outside and solve those problems for local people. And our experience and our perception is that actually that's not the whole truth of our community, that there's all kinds of skills and knowledge and resources that have been neglected and ignored and undervalued. And that our job is to really to identify those skills and resources and opportunities, to nurture them, to celebrate them, and to make them work to tackle some of the local challenges that we have in our community. So that idea of asset-based community development rather than what we call deficit-based, so not focused on, we're honest about the problems, we understand there's lots of challenges in our community, we know them very well from personal experience, but actually our focus is on the opportunities and the things we can nurture to tackle those things. Final thing I just say is it's an organisation that's led by local people, so these approaches of co-production and asset-based community development we've been able to use to build an organisation where local people are active throughout, as members, as trustees, as staff, and as volunteers. So the organisation is very much kind of has local people at its heart, and we take a holistic approach. We're interested in the relationship between issues. We don't tend to deal with one issue over here. We're interested in how food poverty interacts with mental health, interacts with fuel poverty, interacts with poor educational attainment, all these factors that come together. We can go on to the next slide about assets. Just a really quick, so what does asset mean? It's not a very nice word, really. It's a kind of market-based word. I don't really know why you use it. But the dictionary definition is that it's a valuable thing or person. And I just wanted to emphasize that for us, our assets are really broad. We take a really broad definition. So it's our social networks and relationships that we have locally. It's the skills, knowledge, experience, and creativity that exists in our community. The organisation itself is an asset and an opportunity. We're really interested in our heritage and our culture locally and how we celebrate that and make it work for good. And then, of course, buildings and land as well, some of which have gone neglected and can be brought back into use. And people's time as well as an asset. And we use things like time banking to make that asset work for our community. Okay, next slide. I'm going to talk really quickly about 3 particular kind of projects that we run, and Hazel's going to talk about one of them in particular, which we think will be of real interest to you. Just a really quick one, first of all, about our buildings. Does anyone know the Dusty Forge building? It's an old pub on the middle of Cowbridge Road West. It's got real character. It's a real historical kind of building. And we were able to take that on from the council about 5 years ago on an asset transfer. So we have a 99-year lease on the building. And the really important thing for us is it gives us a base centrally in the community. And it's a place that we don't have to be too kind of precious about. It's not kind of really, well, it wasn't really posh, but we've just had some renovation work done, and now it is looking rather posh. But But it's a place that we can work with local people. They can take the initiative in the building, transform bits of it for use, and we've been able to use that sort of DIY approach to really develop a thriving kind of hub, which is a demonstration for all our approaches of co-production. So at the Dusty Forge, we have everything from a community garden, a dusty shed wood workshop, which started out as a men's shed project, but is now men and women use it for woodwork. We have a community shop that provides clothing and baby items and all kinds of stuff that people can take and leave a small donation if they wish. We run projects like our pantry, which I'll tell you about in a minute. So it's a thriving kind of network of projects that all interrelate with each other. It's like a big family. Someone might come in for debt and benefit advice, but they might then get interested in the garden and get involved in the garden, and all kinds of things that have positive implications for their mental health and well-being. But importantly, what we're always trying to do is when people come in with an issue we might be helping with, we're always trying to raise that question. Oh goodness, we've got 1 minute. Yeah. I'm going to hand over to Hazel. Can we flick on 2 slides? Is that okay? Hazel's going to talk about our Your Space project. Yeah.
Right, first of all, can everyone still hear me okay now that the mic's moved? Brilliant. So thanks so much for letting me be here. I was really interested to hear what you were doing. So Dave let me gate crash just to see it in action. So I'm going to talk briefly about the Your Space project. It's a new project, but it's the culmination of years of work between ACE and our local GPs. I think for a long time, ACE has seen that we're doing something with a group of people in the Dusty Forge, and we've got the people that we work with, but there's a lot more people out in our community that we don't know and that we don't work with. And we've been reaching out to GPs to help us to connect with more of our local community. The flip side was GPs have, I think they saw that we were doing something valuable, but they weren't quite sure how to get patients along to us. GPs have lots of things that patients come to them with that they can't really help with. So that's where our social prescribing project came in. So we see people that are referred by a GP for any sort of particular need that the GP doesn't feel that they can help with. It tends to be things like loneliness, social isolation, practical needs like debt benefit, money worries, or sort of other sort of practical issues or concerns that the GP can't really help with. So we work with people one-to-one to explore what they want. It's that sort of traditional what matters conversation that you'll probably be quite familiar with, about exploring what that person really wants, but also starting to have a conversation about assets. What skills do they have? What do they have that they might like to offer? We also have a community development part of the project, which is about developing things within the community that the social prescribers can prescribe people to. So someone might come to us that's lonely or bored or just wants to be doing something a bit more interesting, but nothing exists locally that's really of interest to them. So it's about working with those people to develop whatever it is they would like to do in the community. It's very much around bringing people together, getting people into a room or into a group together and seeing the sort of social bonds and connections that develop through that. That's been very, very difficult during a lockdown. So I've put that as one of our challenges. We can't bring people together in a building anymore. So we've had to work really hard to find ways of bringing people online together. That doesn't really work or isn't appealing for a large proportion of the people we work with, but it will for some. We've done a lot of just phoning people and keeping in touch and linking people up with other people in their community over the phone and finding ways of pairing people up safely. So that's been a real challenge. I've skipped past a step, but I'll stay on challenges for a minute. Another challenge is because people are referred to us, that's a very different way to how ACE has worked previously. Normally people would engage with us and we'd go out and meet people in the community and bring them in. People are referred now and they almost, have I got a little bit longer?
A little bit. There's plenty of time for questions, remember, so you can bring things up.
People are referred, they have slightly different expectations and a different view of themselves. If you're referred for something, you might see yourself more as needy, and it's a bit more work and a bit more of a journey for people to see actually that they're not needy, they are an asset in themselves and they have a lot to offer to their community, but doing that sensitively, so we're not asking people for help when actually they want help themselves. That was difficult to explain really quickly, but I hope that made sense.
As I say,
Hazel,
Hazel,
everyone has something to offer, but also whatever barriers we all have quite similar things that we want about being with other people, feeling valued, feeling useful, doing interesting things. And it's very much about rediscovering those assets that people have. We've seen definitely through lockdown the benefits of one-to-one support. We used to do everything in groups before, and actually some people really benefit and really enjoy having more one-to-one input over the phone. So that's been a bit of learning. And just the benefits of co-production. Obviously, people really enjoy co-producing, and I think it has a benefit to them, but it has massive benefit to us. And it's the one thing, I don't know about Dave, when times are hard and when you get stressed, the one thing that really keeps you going are those members of the community that come in and work with you. That's absolutely the shining light that makes it all worth it. So I can take a breath now. That's the things I need.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sit back and relax now, Hazel. Thank you very much. You've done really well there. And we don't want to cut into the time that the jurors have for questions, but there's plenty of time for questions. So, Nick, over to you now. If you, Dave, if you could put your microphone on mute, and Nick, it's 10 minutes for you now, please.
Sorry, I haven't spoken for a minute. I'm Nick French. From Innovate Trust, and we're very much interested. We support individuals, primarily individuals with a learning disability, and mainly in 3 counties across Cardiff. We started from a project that was coincidentally in Ely in 1967, and we supported people ever since. But we're interested really in trying to promote the rights and opportunities of access, etc., to the people we support. So I did come and talk to Measuring the Mountain about some stuff that we were doing with technology a couple of years ago, and in that vein, we started looking at the possibility of creating our own original, as we were calling it, a social media app. But really, it was about having the opportunity for individuals to communicate with each other, to keep their own records. So we wrote an app that we called Insight, created that in late 2018, and then we trialed it with about 9 people that we support and 1 external organization. Then at the very beginning of this year, our plan was to roll it out to people because we'd learned a lot from using it, tried to iron out its faults. But the idea was that everybody would be able to have their own digital diary, everybody that we supported, and that we'd also be able to put other things on there and invite other organizations to join so they could share their news directly with people we support. And individuals would also be able to create their own records. And like we have an interest in trying to put people's own records and the control of those records where possible in their own hands rather than of staff. So what we wanted to do really was to digitally include all the people we supported. So we'd previously done an exercise to see who had devices and who had access to the internet and what we could do to improve that. But the intention was to roll it out on that basis and to invite in, if people wished, their own families and professionals that would be able to take part in different groups, and people would be able to get a better idea of what was going on and make our service far more transparent. We hope that local authorities, CIW and others would be able to also access the records with the consent of the people that were using the app. So they would be able to get a better idea of what was going on and get to know people better, because these days some professionals don't always have that much time, and they definitely don't have time to read files, and the files don't always contain what people like and enjoy, whereas the whole premise of this was that people would record their own activities and the things that they liked and enjoyed. It was also avoiding some of the problems that people that we support have had with bullying, with mainstream social media apps as well. And it was a private app that could only be entered with our consent. However, we were due to roll this out and start rolling it out at the beginning of the year, and we planned to do so. But by February, it seemed pretty obvious that we were heading towards difficult situations to come. So we decided to roll it out early and started gifting devices, because that's also very important to us, is that the people we support own the devices. They're not just borrowing them. and that they can then access whatever they want online at any point, and not just our app. You know, they might dip in and out of that. We also decided to roll some of the activities that we've been providing in the community in a different way, and run those through Zoom through the app. And then we started latterly, well, I say latterly, I mean by April really, I'm inviting other organisations to join, and started to speaking to professionals in the community and people first groups about whether they had individuals that were isolated that might want to join the activities that we were creating. So by this stage, we were looking at more of a online community hub, but wider community, because by this stage we also had people, I said at the start, we only work in 3 counties, but we'd expanded it out to about 6 or 7 counties by this point, of people that had heard about it and wanted to join and access the activities. So by May, we developed like sing-along groups, yoga classes, Tai Chi, dance, street dance, chair dance. I'm not going to try and list the whole lot, but walkthroughs and things of places that people had previously been to, like a farm walkthrough, because they couldn't access the activity itself. And themed evenings, coffee mornings, opportunity for people to chat. We also had Zumba classes, the drama classes, learning to sign, Welsh, and cooking group. But altogether, there's about 45 activities a week that we run as through stream, through Zoom. What also made it better for the people that we support was that they were able to access it in one place. So rather than having to log on to various different sites, as more organisations joined, at the moment we've got 21 organisations have joined Insight. So they might share their own information, or they might share their own activities, and they're free to post those in the live activities section of Insight. I hope you had a chance to watch the video before this as well, which is probably doing a better job of explaining it than I am at the moment. But it's also on YouTube as well, if anyone wants to go back and have another look. And we've made a more sort of co-productive video with people we support and our partners that's going to be going live from the beginning of next week as well. I suppose what we saw is that this is an opportunity for organisations to share, and I think that what's happened during the COVID period is that lots of people have created their own activities and their own online activities that people can join. But there isn't so much sort of consolidating of those in one place. And I think it opens up people's lives in terms of the people that we support. It gives them an opportunity to talk to people further afield, people that they didn't know before. And it's not as a perfect way of doing things, maybe for some people, but for others, we've been able to engage with individuals that we previously were having difficulty engaging in activities and things within the community. The fact that people can dip in and out as well, and there's no sort of obligation to take part in the whole thing. They can just, you know, turn up, or they might decide that they're going to communicate through their digital diary or through a community group, because we have got several groups within the app as well. But what we hope to do is to widen the offer. So we're really saying if there's any other organisations with similar approaches to ours, supporting individuals as we are, that they'd be welcome to come and join our app. There's no cost to that at all. We're bearing all the costs from our reserves, and we intend to continue to offer that expansion to people with a learning disability across Wales. At the moment, we have, I think, about 600 members on Insight, and we only support about 300 of those individuals. So the others are previously unknown to us, if you like. All of our sessions are hosted, and so we have also some sessions are run by some of the people we support. We've been able to develop that as well over time. So I think I've probably gone under the 10 minutes, haven't I? Because no one's raised their hand or anything. But that was the end of my bit. Thank you.
Thank you, Nick. You've done marvellously there. Got us back on track. So thank you for explaining the app and doing it in less than 10 minutes. So well done there. No pressure, Dave, at all. So now looking for Claire from NEWCIS. You've got 10 minutes now to present to the jury. Thank you very much. Diolch fawr.
Good morning. Thank you for the opportunity to come along today. My name's Claire Sullivan and I'm the CEO for NEWCIS, which is a carers service delivering services to unpaid family carers across North East Wales. We have currently 15,500 carers registered to the service. It's a very, very busy service, and we're very proud of the things that we can offer to carers. The whole ethos of the organisation is basically to support somebody in that unpaid caring role whilst they're at home. So we provide lots and lots of information. We provide support, emotional support, many practical services, and just like Nick, we're now, of course, all these services have moved to Zoom in the last 6 months, which goes a little bit against the grain, to be honest, because the whole of our service has been built up on bringing people together, and that's what really, really makes it work. We want to make a difference to carers, and to be honest, the whole ethos of the organisation is that if that is not going to help a carer in what they're having to do on a daily basis, then we're not really interested in doing it. And how we get to know whether something works for somebody and whether that service is practical and helpful to them is because we talk to so many daily. I mean, in this half year, our contacts have been something like 22,500 contacts we've had with carers since COVID began. Last year, I think that it was near like 50,000 on the whole year's stats, and we take 4,000 referrals a year, new referrals coming in. So you can see that our interaction on a daily basis, you know, we do talk to a lot of people and we listen. And that's how the project that we've highlighted for you today, Bridging the Gap, has come to being. We, many years ago, through working in co-production with other organisations, the local authority and carers, we asked what was important to them and what did they need. And basically, respite has always been an issue for carers. Many not being able to access it. There was waiting lists in our area for any services. The paperwork, if you wanted a direct payment, you have to become an employer. There were so many different barriers for people to access. And what carers told us is that they wanted to have support when they wanted it, by who they wanted to provide that support. They wanted it to be a quick and easy process. And they also talked about having a need for, in a crisis, in an emergency to them, how could they get help quickly so that they could go to that crisis and go to that other family member or whatever it was that was going on in their life. So a group of us got together and we got given the task to come up with a scheme. And I sent all the details on all the technical ways of how the scheme works, and basically following a carer's needs assessment or a what matters assessment, somebody can be offered a Bridging the Gap code. So there's no exchange of money. They don't have to engage with invoices, payments or anything. We deal with all of that for them. And what it does, it gives them a brochure with a number of providers that can offer them some support if they want to go off and do things. So the support can be somebody coming into their house. It could be delivered from a care home or a day centre, or it can even be a family member. So I'm just going to quickly give you some examples because I think that's the best way to show you how it works. So we deliver lots of courses, drop-ins and groups, and carers pre-COVID could book a care agency to come in so that they could come and attend our courses, our drop-ins, get to chat with other carers. We have a lady that cares for her mum from the Wirral. That's about a 45-minute drive from where she is, and she comes across every single day to look after mum. She was telling us that she gets little time with her own family and her own husband. So sort of once a month, she has a day in the weekend where she gathers her family together. She puts the care in, and she gets to have a day doing what she wants to do without having to drive over to see mum. We have another gentleman who uses it. He runs a business from home, and most of the time it bobs along absolutely great with Dad living with him and him running his business. But there's times when he needs some space or some business matters to be dealt with. So he uses it that we bring somebody in to support Dad while he's getting on with his business dealings. Weekend breaks are a common thing. We had a lady whose grandson was quite upset that she never ever went to see him play football. So she uses it when he's at a match, and she gets to spend some time with the grandson, and it's a whole well-being thing that she gets that break. We've got a 90-year-old gentleman who still cares for his son with learning difficulties. His hobby is fishing, and once a fortnight he goes off and has a couple of hours to fish, and then comes back to look after his son. We also have a scheme within this scheme. Sorry, I'm just going to have a quick drink. Currently, the scheme does allow for family support, and this has really come into its own for COVID. As the restrictions lifted slightly in Wales, of course, carers, it's been a real issue that they didn't particularly want anyone in their homes. So the family part of the scheme offers a carer to be able to pay expenses to a family member. So if they were driving down from Scotland or having to catch a train, they could offer that member of family to come over. They could pay their expenses, additional meals that may have to be provided while they're staying with them. It would support that. If they are now able to go out for the day to Bodment Gardens or a zoo, it would pay for an entrance fee for them to have a day together taking a break. It has been used, well, in the first month of us sort of re-advertising this facility, we had 30 carers immediately absolutely jump on the fact, because their families were in their bubbles, they'd missed them anyway. They had that relationship of trust as to they knew where they'd been, or they hadn't had to go to several homes to care. So it really has come into its own. An example is one lady had a sister who lived in Scotland. She has cared for their brother for 14 years, and she visits him 8 times a day. The sister had a big wedding anniversary coming up, and she really wanted to have a break. So we were able to ask the sister, and what carers are telling us is that the ability to be able to sort of say, look, I can pay for some expenses, it gives them the arm to ask them to come and help, rather than them come and visit. Because what they're saying is, if you ask a member of family to come and visit, you don't really expect them to help you clean or walk the dog or help you go out. That's a visit, whereas this is an enabler to ask that family member, this scheme is available, could you come and support me? So it's been a real asset, and it's particularly busy at the moment trying to help people. And this lady got a well-earned break after 14 years and took her husband away. To date, the scheme's had over 2,000 carers using it. It really does make a difference to people. It fits well with the Act principles. It's easy to use. We feel it prevents carer breakdown. There's no exchange of money. It gives people control and choice and flexibility to do what they want to do when they want to do it. So it really is a winner. In terms of emergency care as well, it's quite structured. If we have a normal code that goes out and then we recycle the money. And one of the big things about the scheme, and one of the winners of the scheme, was we didn't get any additional money when this scheme came into place. But what we found is that the same amount of money that used to service about 45 carers a year could now reach out to nearly 300 carers a year. Because the amazing thing of the scheme is that codes only last 6 months. But carers, they know that they have this amount of hours in that 6 months to use, but they don't use all of it. and the average is sort of about 2/3. So whenever their month ends, whether it be April, May, June, or whatever, we have the code ends. So the remaining money that's been unspent is put back into the pot, and then it enables more and more carers to use it. So we certainly have enabled carers to have much more flexibility and much more reach to gaining some breaks, and I think that's one of the real benefits. At the end of the 6 months, the carer gets the choice, to come back to the scheme, and they can, as long as our budgets allow, they can go back onto the scheme and have another code for 6 months. So there's no hanging on to money, because it's manoeuvred through the system. People are quite relaxed at sort of saying, oh, that code's ended, oh, I'll come back to you in a month or so, and they pick it back up. So it's been a real winner for us, and most importantly for the carers. So we're really pleased to have had the opportunity to talk about it today.
Thank you very much, Claire. Just check everything's on with me. Yeah, that's fantastic. So we now have about 50 minutes worth of questions. So the questions have been coming through to myself and Joseph through the system. So I'm going to start working my way through them. I'm going to start with a question from Cyril. If I can just spot that now. So Cyril asked the question of, why can't all the social services have ideas like this? And that's addressed to all of you, all three of you. Why can't social services have the ideas that you have? And I'll look to Dave and Hazel to start that one. Put your microphone on, Dave. Dave, microphone on. Dave? Dave, you're going to have to put your microphone on. I'm guessing it's brilliant, but your microphone's off. Okay, well, we'll sort that out with Dave. Claire, could you answer that question, because your microphone's on?
Okay, yes, will do. To be fair, the local authorities that we work with in Flint, Denbighshire and Wrexham, we do work very closely with them. And Bridging the Gap sort of came through an exercise that we were consulting with them, as well as our third sector colleagues, and as well as our carers. I think the relationships that we have developed over the years, and sometimes they have constraints, as all local authorities do, and most of it comes to money, and those sort of ideas we take to lottery and different people that the rules might not be as stringent, and over the years we have had a lot of cutbacks, and I don't always think it's that they don't want to help us. I think sometimes it's just a bit difficult, but I find ours are quite open. Sometimes they look at me and say, really, Claire? The more that I work on them, generally we can get round to working together and doing things. So it's not all bad. It really isn't all bad, honestly.
Okay, thank you, Claire. Nick, I'm going to ask you the same question then, about why aren't social services able to do the things that you do?
Well, I don't think they're not able to do it. I just think that they've got a lot of other things to be doing, really, haven't they? I think that sometimes in smaller organisations you can move a little bit more quickly. You haven't got the same level of maybe bureaucracy and decision making, which often slows those things down. I think that some organisations try and encourage people to think about new things and think about how they can implement those. I think sometimes in statutory sector there isn't maybe that much opportunity for that. And people are too burdened with their sort of daily workloads. I don't think though that I think people in local authorities are definitely, or the ones I deal with, they are engaged, or they can be encouraged to be engaged in ideas. When you're coming up with new concepts at the start, I think it's difficult for people to fully grasp them until they exist. and maybe you don't really realise the potential positive implications of something at an early stage. And it's like later that you can get that across and that people can see the impact that it will have. But I do think people want to be engaged. I don't find that I'm fighting that, really. People want to do things in different ways.
Thank you, Nick. Appreciate that.
Just to say the microphone's back on now. Sorry, I had turned it off at the mic. I didn't realise it had been turned off on my laptop. Sorry about that.
That's okay. Dave, it's your chance to shine now. Your thoughts about social services not being able to respond as flexibly or as quickly as you do in ACE?
Yeah, I guess the only thing we'd add to what's already been said is, from our point of view, some of the traditional social services have become fairly rigid in the sort of the distinction between professionals who provide expertise and the people receiving the services, and that's kind of got linked a little bit to some risk aversion and fear in sort of nurturing the ability of people to support each other and to meet their own needs. So I guess that's something we're trying to kind of overcome in our work and take that the implications of that seriously and the risks that are associated with that seriously. But that can be a difficult thing to do because it can be unsettling for that traditional sort of professional relationship as the one who has the knowledge and the expertise that they bring to other people. So that's the only thing I'd add. I don't know if Faisal could add.
That's perfect.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. I've got a question for Nick now from Andy. He's really interested in your app and wants to know how many users you've had and do you have any plans for expansion?
I think we've got around 600 members at the moment of Insight. The expansion depends on who wants to join us, really. I mean, people have talked about, capacity and how many people we could absorb. If we can continue to encourage other organisations to join our app and to share their activities, then I don't really see why we should stop. So as far as I'm concerned, if any organisations or individuals want to contact us and say that they could either contribute or benefit from our service or from our app, then we would like to, as I said before, change that into what's a community online, a wider community online. I think it challenges some of the existing concepts between local authorities. At the moment, Cardiff Day Services and the Vale Day Services are developing their own sessions for people with more profound impairments that they're going to run through the app. And of course, there's going to be people from other counties joining those sessions, which, wouldn't have happened before. So I think it's going to break down some barriers. And I do hope that other organisations will be looking at it and thinking, well, if I've got half a dozen activities online running each week, then why wouldn't I want to join this? Because then we might have 51 activities the following week that anybody would be able to exercise. The people we support couldn't access any activity that's on there, and also use devices in other ways as well. But yeah, I'm beating around the bush, really. Yeah, the answer is yes, we want to expand it. We want to offer the people opportunity to join. And also organisations to join and increase all of the numbers, both organisationally and individuals.
Thank you, Nick. Very clear, that one. I've got a question now from Giles, who feels all these projects are amazing, just amazing, he says. And what have been the main barriers that you've experienced in setting them up? Where have you got support from? And I'm going to look to Dave to start that one.
Say anything about barriers in your space?
Yeah, can you hear me okay with the mic?
Yes.
So I suppose I spoke about barriers a little bit anyway. The biggest barrier to setting up was getting enough funding in. Social prescribing is everywhere at the moment, and sometimes there's a bit of difficulty getting new funding to do the same thing. I think the hardest thing initially was getting funding to do the community development that sits alongside the social prescribing. There were lots of projects going on that would sort of see people and support them to access things in the community, but there was no funding going in to make sure there were things in the community for them to access. So that was a big barrier, and I think what helped was I our local primary care cluster of GPs are very, very sold on social prescribing. They've very much been there with us along the journey. And they were active in finding other examples and speaking to the health board and sort of getting that project as part of a health board application for Welsh Government funding. So I think that's where we've had the support, really. Yeah. I'll think about the barriers as others are speaking. I think that was the main one, just to get us started. Along with the sort of the barrier I mentioned, that people, when they're referred, are more likely to see themselves as needy. And that's not what we want people to think. You know, we want people to be able to see their own assets and be a part of something locally. It's just been a slightly longer and harder journey for people who are referred than what we've been used to in ACE, and that more sort of traditional engagement. So that's been a bit of a barrier as well.
The other thing I'd add is that sense of stigma that some people associate with coming to you for help, and trying to get beyond being seen as a kind of treating people as a kind of charity case. And again, that's about supporting people's confidence to feel that they are participants and contributors and not just kind of receivers.
Thank you, Dave. Claire, so the barriers, Giles' question about barriers. What have been the main barriers you've experienced in setting things up, and who has been supportive of you?
I think it's fair to say that barriers are there, but if you're determined enough, you can generally work through them. Most of the people that we work with in across North Wales are supportive of what we want to do. Sometimes it's a financial thing, so we work with partnerships, and I'll look for some money with the lottery or a different funder, and then during COVID we had Steve Morgan money and food boxes and busy boxes for carers, and then local authority, we set the scheme up as of the 30th of March. All three local authorities on our health board said, right, get it started, we'll give you a few grand to get it started, whilst you're looking for additional funding to continue it. So it was a real partnership effort in, with all of them. I've got a really supportive board as well, and our trustees are quite dynamic, so they help me a lot. And we go out to private businesses, we see who will help us. And it's about sort of using all people that are willing to come and help, really. We've got an amazing lot. We've got some like 165 volunteers with the service who want to give back. And we have a social enterprise, so I use them to the hilt as well, because they've got a van. They think it's their van, but I think I've pinched it off them now. It's out there every day delivering stuff for our carers. So it's been a real sort of co-production sort of effect, and sometimes things come in at later stages. But I think it's just don't give up, isn't it? And just keep trying. And I think that partnership, the ethos of partnership, and carers are so important in our community. They're delivering so much care themselves. We really couldn't do without them. So I find if I go and talk to anyone, I can convince them enough that they really do need to get behind us and look at all the people we help. And when you see that feedback coming back from carers saying that it's really made a difference, and you've helped them to do things and see people and get out and survive during COVID, it just makes it all worthwhile. It has been a difficult time for everyone, hasn't it? But we're still there. And all this Zooming, our courses and our groups by Zoom, it breaks my heart, to be honest, but it's better than us not being out there at all.
Yeah.
You just gotta keep going, and that's what we've done, really. But I look at my job. My job can be difficult, but I look at the job of the carers and I think, stop moaning, get on with it.
Yeah. Thank you, Claire. Nick, I'm going to ask you the same question then. So, what have been the main barriers that you've experienced in setting things up, and how have local authorities been supportive?
Well, I suppose firstly, sorry. Firstly, it's devices. Obviously, everybody watching, having to take part in this has got a device. Otherwise, you wouldn't be taking part in it. So if people don't have devices, then they're not going to be able to access anything online. So, that has to be the first consideration. So what we did was as I said previously, is we gifted all of those devices. you know, to the people that we support. But obviously we can't influence that agenda further afield too much. We have gifted devices to people that we don't support as well. There was a financial element to that, because that ended up costing about £100,000. But we decided to go out on and just use the money from our own reserves for that purpose. But then latterly, Welsh Government introduced a COVID grant where we were able to claim quite a lot of that back under a communications element as well. So I think there's got to be a commitment to that. And one of our partners over the last few years has been Digital Community Wales, which is obviously all about you know, digital inclusion, which we think is very important. And there are so many ways that individuals with a learning disability won't be included in elements of society communication, and what becomes the normal or the new normal. You know, some of the ways that people were supported in the past wouldn't be the way that people necessarily do things now as well. So you need to be connected digitally to be able to take part in those tasks. So I'd say also there's an element of, like, for other organisations, getting money to people, getting devices to people. I think some of those devices have been lent to people, and there's some confusion about what they can use those devices for, and can they use them for sort of wider things. We've actually had a couple of people who have said, well, I'd love to join Insight, but I can't use my device for that because my device was gifted by this other organisation, and I'm only allowed to use it for meetings with them. So I mean, that's been a bit of an issue for us. Also accessing individuals. I mean, I should imagine that in the areas that we work in, there's large amounts of individuals that could really benefit from the activities that we're offering, both in the community that we don't know about, and supported by other providers or in different settings. We can only share the information we've got, but if people don't then pass that information on, or find a way for people to become engaged, then, you know, going back to my last, you know, point, the question about numbers, we won't be able to increase things. And in some cases, I do think that there's a little bit of a legacy of procurement really on this front in terms of competitive tendering, and that some organisations don't seem willing to benefit the individuals to share. Because I think that they might be thinking that it would put a feather in our cap in future procurement processes where we provide applying for supported living services, as we have to do, you know, cyclically X number of years. You know, that isn't our intention. So, I mean, I think those are the barriers. But going back to the first one, obviously, if you haven't got a device and you haven't got access to the internet, then you're not going to be taking part in anything online.
Yeah. I've got another question for you, Nick, about the Insight app from Josh. And he wants to know, what's the biggest way that you tell people about this app? Is it through social workers telling the people they work with, or do you use social media or other means so that people can use it?
We have used social media. As I said, the Insight app is also on YouTube with a whole load of our other stuff, and that's, you know, freely available for people to look up. We've contacted lots of other organisations and told them about it. We've told them about all the activities that we're running, and we've offered them for the people that they support and them as organisations to join the app as well. I mean, I've also done stuff through individual case managers where I can. I've spoken to different social work teams and teams where people are trying to involve people in activities in the community where maybe their activity is unable to continue at the moment and they've got limited access. I mean, yes, I suppose that it's more difficult to get the message out there. So I was hoping that the opportunity to speak today would get the message out there in a greater way. And I've also been invited to speak at the All Wales People First conference on the 7th of October, where I was hoping that would give me an opportunity and a platform to speak to a lot of people directly, and a lot of organisations that would be attending, and also the Learning Disability Wales conference as well, which again, they want to do a couple of workshops at that. I suppose that there's also the, going back to the previous question as well, there's the digital skills element as well. You can give somebody a device, but you need to have somebody that's able to support them to be able to use it. And we've been running those activities through the app and how to use various different things. But again, there's still the technology is the barrier. Sorry, I skipped questions.
No, Nick, that's lovely. That's fine. It's great. Thank you for answering those questions. Really appreciate that. I've got a question now from Joe for Claire, who simply wants to know how often is there money left at the end of the month?
Nearly every single month, because we have so many people on the project. So I think last year there was over 300 carers that had access to it. So the average figure of spend is 2/3 of the money that we allocate. So when we give them a code, say in May, it lasts 6 months, and that money is saved for that carer. At the end of that 6 months, if they've only used 2/3 of it, the £100 goes back, and there could be 5 or 6 or 7 ending in that month. So therefore, at that point, there's always another couple of codes that we can then give out. So only once in all the time that we've been doing this did we get stuck for 2 months. We had a bit of a flurry on it, and I couldn't allocate out for 2 months. But after that, the whole time we've been running the scheme, it just completely recycles the money all the time. And because it's not going out, because I know we're a provider, but because it's not going out to the providers in a bulk amount. So when we give a code to a carer, we don't send £300 to the provider that they're using. We have it. So that means that we can, it's an accounting nightmare, and I can't say that the accountants like me for this. Over the years, we have perfected it, and when we get to the end of the year, we have to accrue, money going through, because the potential is it could be spent because we've allocated out. And then if people don't use it all, it goes straight back in the pot and straight back out. So it really is. That's how we benefit as many people as we do, and it's quite interesting that they don't use it all. It is quite interesting.
Yeah.
Because it's the one thing that carers ask for all the time, and yet they don't fully utilise it. So whether that's sort of a bit of I'll save it in case kind of mentality, in that they want to hang on to a little bit, and we do have the emergency scheme. So if there was an emergency, that equally can be accommodated, and we don't make them have a carers need assessment or a what matters assessment at that point. If they're known to us, great, but if they're not known to us, we just get on with dealing with it. And then when things have calmed down, we'll go back to them and say, right, this is part of our preventative work. Have access to this scheme, and that may prevent that crisis from coming on again. So we go back to them and make sure. And the good thing is that it does make them register with us. So there's always plenty of information, and newsletters have still gone out during COVID. It's been a bit of a nightmare, but we've managed it. So by post, we have managed to reach people, websites and everything else that we've got on social media. But because I feel the same as Nick, there's many carers that haven't got facility to join us. We have tried to do something about that, like Nick as well, and we've taught people. We've had a 90-year-old on a course for lasting power of attorney, who we gave instruction on how to use an iPad, so that was quite an achievement.
Wow.
But he did it.
Well done. Yeah. I'm going to just cut across you there. Thank you very much. I've got questions from Claire and Nina, but I just want to check with Tafsila if you have a question at all.
Hello. Yeah, no, I'm okay at the moment. I'm just really enjoying. I've really enjoyed the presentations, and just would like to take this point just to say thank you to everyone that's presented today. And I'm definitely going to be tweeting about the Innovate app and telling everyone that I get in contact. I think it's such an amazing app.
Okay, thank you, Tafsila. So keep thinking about questions, and I'm going to ask Claire's question now, who is a question for Claire, just very briefly, Claire, can you tell us how flexible is the code scheme, and what if a carer has a barrier to going on in a break in terms of their low income? Can you assist?
Yes, and we do. We've currently got a lottery project in place. This summer we've funded holidays and caravans and different things, and then we combine all the projects together. So we run a grant scheme, so we can give them £150 towards spends. And one lady took 3 young children, all with disabilities, away. The Bridging the Gap code supported her mum to go with her to help her with the 3 children. The lottery paid for the caravan to go away, and we have a grant scheme that gave them money to spend on food when they were there.
Thank you very much, Claire. I've got a question from Nina now for everybody, for all 3, and I'm going to start with you, Dave, if that's okay. Question to all the members: what fundamental principle of the Social Services and Wellbeing Act Wales does your organisation focus on solving?
I would imagine.
Go on, you're on.
For us, it's co-production is well, it runs through us like words through a stick of rock, doesn't it, Dave? And just, a long part of co-production is how people view themselves and their sort of how they relate with services. I think Dave alluded earlier to, we try not to have such strict barriers between sort of professionals and service users. If I ever say something like a customer or service user or patient to my boss, he gives me a bit of a slap on the wrist, because he says, well, no, they're people, they're not service users, don't put people in boxes. I really sort of felt that as a sort of something coming through the Social Service Wellbeing Act when that came out. So yeah, I don't know if that answers the question sufficiently.
Just to say as well, I think the times when we see real personal transformation for people have come from very, very difficult circumstances with multiple kind of interplaying issues that they're dealing with. The time we see real long-term transformation is when people find that thing that they contribute, and when that's celebrated and taken up and shared within the community context. And they're recognised for what they can bring. That's when we tend to see people turn a bit of a corner and develop confidence and a sense of meaning and purpose. And that so often has multiple kind of implications for people's mental and physical health. And also then everyone has benefits as well, because they're making that contribution that we'd all be missing out on before they were able to do that. So co-production, as Hazel says, is kind of fundamental to everything we do, really. Right,
okay. Thank you, Dave and Hazel. Nick, same question to you then. What fundamental principle of the Social Services and Wellbeing Act does your organisation focus on? Your microphone needs to come on.
Sorry. Involving people in things as much as they can be, really. Co-production, involvement in planning their own lives, involvement in our organisation in terms of our, half of our trustees are people that we support as well. So guiding our organisation to achieve as much inclusion as we can, and to co-produce wherever possible, really, I think.
Thank you, Nick. Claire, same question.
Okay, I think the act really fits with our organisation, to be honest. Improve and give carers a voice, and that's very much where we sit. To give them control in their lives. So if they're wanting to work and care, and we speak up for people. It's all about prevention and early intervention. So our service is all about that. If we can start working with a carer at the beginning of their caring role, we know that we can prevent crises from happening and give them some, if you're caring for someone with dementia, we give them a course on dementia. Those skills are really, really valued. It's all about co-production and working together, collaboration, partnership work. We're not an organisation that stands alone. We have so many partners and people that we work with, and it is about providing what we provide under the Act and under our funding, but also sharing with other people. So, you know, if Nick's organisation or Dave's organisation could help, we would refer them to them as well. And I think, you know, that's absolutely key, that you've got to know what's in your local community.
Yeah. Great, thank you. No, thank you. I've got a question from Giles, a statement and a question from Giles, who is really impressed by the energy from the four of you speaking today. And he really wants to know, how do you feel you can ensure that these types of things continue without their leadership? Some sort of legacy planning. So how do you feel your activities will continue without their leadership? So I'll go to Dave and Hazel, start with that one.
Interesting, because we're doing some work on that at the moment as an organisation. And in a way, we've taken the opportunity of the lockdown, trying to get something positive out of it, to sort of pilot some approaches to widening leadership within the organisation. We sort of moved to, whilst we have a kind of slightly hierarchical structure on paper with a director and senior managers, we've really built the culture of the organisation as quite a kind of shared leadership model. So we have a management team. We're very conscious about being clear about what skills each member of that team brings to the table. And we've got a very complementary sort of wide set of skills. And that's about being honest with each other about strengths and weaknesses and you know, what part each of you play in the management of the organisation. But we've really moved that on a notch, really, because we've been thinking very carefully about this. That I guess a couple of us helped establish the organisation, have been here a long time, and have kind of carried the leadership role. So yeah, we're very consciously now sort of trying out a flatter sort of management structure, sharing leadership roles, working out how you can sort of share out some of the responsibilities of the director. And kind of make sure that they're not too dependent on one or two people. It's a bit of a journey, and we're actually getting some external consultations to help us with it. So we've got an objective kind of outside of you, because we're also close to it and kind of, you know, up to our necks in it. So having an external kind of objective take on it is being really helpful as well. So yeah, really interesting issue for us, and one that's quite live at the moment. And comes down again to our culture of sort of sharing skills and acknowledging a role that everyone can play.
Yeah. Any sort of short-term feedback that's starting to come out from that process? From the consultant's work? Has you got to that yet?
No, we're just starting that process at the moment. So he's doing each of the kind of senior management, and he's going to come back with some conclusions to discuss with the board. The board of trustees have had initial conversations with senior managers about it. There's been some interesting things that come out of that.
Okay, thank you, Dave. Nick, same question to you then. Legacy planning and leadership without you there.
Well, I mean, the organisation has always worked on the basis of sharing ideas with sort of the wider community, if you like. And I suppose that goes back historically to our start, when we were working on models of supporting people in different ways that ultimately culminated in the closing down of long-term institutional care for people with a learning disability. So I think that we've tried to stay true to that. So whether we exist as an organisation or not in the future, what we hope is that the ideas that we try and develop now and in the years to come, that we will be sharing those ideas as we are today, and that therefore those can be replicated or developed by other organisations and taken forward for the benefit of all, really. So I think it's the way we work, is to try and share and to try and influence societal, or at least change within our own sector, shall we say. So I hope that whether, you know, as an organisation, I don't think that we need to exist necessarily in the future. It would be good if we did, but if we didn't, then some of those ideas will continue on.
Right, thank you, Nick. And Claire, same question for you, please. Your microphone, please, Claire. Thank you.
It's something that we also have been looking at. 5 years ago, NEWCIS became independent. We were part of another organisation before then. It's been on our business plan and on our risk assessment that, you know, there's certain key people in the charity So what are we going to do about it? And I think it is about, training the management team and building that work together. The board's very active, and they do have a key role in that. And we have done quite team building exercises and different things with the management team to ensure that the culture of the organisation is through. I think being a positive employer helps. Short-term funding doesn't. And I think reduction in core costs. A lot of the local authorities have reduced what used to be a core cost for management, and some of the proposals that you put in, there isn't enough there to cover management costs, and I think that is going forward quite a key issue for third sector, because the delivery of the standard of services that we're delivering are in line with everybody else, and we have all the quality marks and all the different things and processes and procedures, and quite often when you are applying for funding, there's not enough money there to support that. But in terms of addressing it, we certainly have been, and I'm really fortunate now that I have 2 operation managers now that support me, and we take it forward as a team, and it is around teamwork without a doubt.
Thank you, Claire. I'm going to stick with you, Claire, now for just a question from Victoria about barriers to rolling. What sort of barriers do you think are there for rolling your types of projects out across the whole of Wales?
Well, Britain the Cat, particular one that we've focused on, we have had inquiries across Wales about it, and we willingly share what we do. People have come and talked to us, so I don't see. You just have to have the right determination to get it done. When we first set it up, we have like 40 providers now that are on our books for this scheme, and that was looked at as a bit of a barrier, that I wouldn't be able to do that. Well, actually, if you go and talk to people, and if you tell them that you're going to pay them on time, and that this is a legitimate project that's supporting people, there's quite a lot of goodwill out there. So if you tackle it in the right way and respect people, then it does work, and I see absolutely no reason why this scheme couldn't be rolled out, and it gives more equality to carers. And it's not a care package. You have to remember that it's not a care package for the person that is being cared for. It is for the carer to be able to book a hair appointment or go and shopping with their daughter on a Saturday or a Sunday. It's not a care package. So it is around carers' needs, and we had a few hiccups when we started it, but now it's just plain sailing, and it's easy to run.
Thank you, Claire. Dave and Hazel, I'm going to ask the same question to you. You're based in Caerau and Ely. What would you think would be the barriers to rolling out your approach across the whole of Wales?
So actually, we've already come across this a little bit with the Your Space project. It doesn't just cover Caerau and Ely, it covers Canton and Riverside as well. And being located in Caerau and Ely, it's very, very easy for us to engage with people in that community and get people into our building and sort of form things around the resources we have in that area. In Canton and Riverside, we had to form a partnership then. We were very, very lucky. There's another very good community development organisation in that area that we were able to partner up with and sort of do some of those same things around their building and their resources. I think the challenge in rolling out is having, I think you need a local presence, and you're almost, I find it hard to see a model that wouldn't rely on a sort of a place-based organisation that was very much just focused around the community that activity was taking place in. I don't know how you do it with an organisation that was based elsewhere, that was more national, but that's perhaps my own limitations, because that's the way I've always worked and always been very community-based. David, you wanted to say something as well?
No, just similar really. The ACE is an organisation that's grown in a very specific context and has grown through relationships with people in this context, so it is tailored and designed and sort of like a plant, like a tree that's grown in that particular soil. So where you'd struggle to roll that out in a traditional sense, what I do think needs to be kind of rolled out or shared is the ethos and the approach of just allowing and facilitating things to grow that are unique to a particular community and make sense in that community. You know, whether that becomes an organisation like ACE or it takes on a different characteristic or kind of form. You know, that's what I think that's the aspect of it that I think needs kind of rolling out, if you like.
Can I just just to say as well, the primary care cluster, the local GPs that we're working with, that is an incredibly dedicated group of people who are very, very determined to make social prescribing work in their cluster area, and the amount of sort of additional, you know, weekend, evening, unpaid time a lot of those people have put in, and the sort of just the drive that they have. You would need something similar in other areas for your partners as well, I think, to really make it work.
Just really quickly, going back to the asset thing, one of the reasons that you know what we do here will look different from elsewhere is because we have a different and unique set of assets and opportunities in other communities. And a really good example of that for us is we have incredible local heritage sites in the estate and around the estate that are nationally significant but have been neglected. And that for us has been a huge opportunity to work with local people to tell a different story about our community. Now another community will have other opportunities that are very different, but that's the kind of thing you want to tap into and build energy from.
Thank you very much, both. Same question for you then, please, Nick.
Nothing and everything that I've already listed before. I think I don't think that there's any reason why this couldn't be rolled across Wales and further afield, and that's exactly what I intend to try and achieve. But then going back to the issues around access to the internet, access to equipment, willingness and understanding, awareness of the app in the first place, all of those present elements of barriers. And in the longer term, I suppose there's funding elements as well that like supporting it can be quite intensive and takes up a lot of my time personally, and a few other people's times as well, I should imagine. So resources would probably be an issue eventually, but really I don't think there's any major region. They're not unsurmountable reasons, you know. They should be able to be tackled, and people should be able to have the access if they want to have it.
Thank you, Nick. I've got a question from Tafsila. Tafsila, if you'd like to ask your question.
Yeah, my question was, do you have much take-up for, this is a question for all of you, from BAME communities, and if not, are you working towards kind of getting them involved, and how are you doing this?
Claire, do you like to start with that? Sorry,
okay,
just looking at the question.
Yes, no, we do work with the BME ethnicity carers. We have currently we've got a carer and we have some language barriers, and their son has to come and talk while we're doing assessments with them. So we engage with the local authority with the translation services. We've also got some deaf carers, and we have to do similar sort of things for signing and the use of technology. So anyone that comes to us, there's obviously the Welsh as well. You know, anyone with any language barrier or culture barriers, we will always respect and try and work with them. Currently, I should know this stuff off our database. We do have a few percentage of people with ethnic backgrounds. There's Indian and quite a few Polish people that are in our area. So we do try to go into their communities. We have a group that goes out into one of the Polish communities, and we try to accommodate as best as we can. It's generic, so it's accessible to anyone. We just need to engage with people in the best way we can to help them.
Thank you. Dave.
Compared to the context of the Your Space project, also we're getting a bit of feedback.
No, you're right.
So it's an area that we've tried lots of different things in. We've but there's still, so we've got sort of, I would say, reasonable engagement from BA and ME communities in our project and in the different bits of our project. But there's still things that we want to try to increase that a little further. We've really benefited from the partnerships that we have. Two organisations that we work with in the Canton and Riverside area have hundreds, possibly thousands of members from the AME communities that are engaged in their services. They provide us with a really good routine and some really good advice on how to engage with those communities. The GPs have been wonderful because obviously everyone goes to the GP generally, and the GPs are representative of those communities and know them very well. And the GPs have sort of cherry-picked particular people from us, patients of theirs they know are sort of, what's the word, quite influential in different communities. And if we can work with that patient, then they will talk to the other people in their community and then sort of encourage those people to come along to our activities. So that's been quite successful. We're planning to do a bit more engagement now that things, hopefully, fingers crossed, outdoor will remain an option during COVID. We're looking to engage in the gardening project in the Riverside area. It's got very high engagement from lots of the different communities there, and that'll be a sort of way to have some face-to-face contact and get to know those communities a little bit better.
Just one of the real challenges for us is that Ely has been perceived as a white working class community in those kind of terms, which is a challenge for us because we're trying to tackle that narrative. It's not true, and we don't really like distinction describing white working class as separate from working class generally. There's all kinds of issues there basically, but we've tried to tackle that by creating an environment in the building where the full spectrum of people who live alongside each other in a community are represented. The challenge for us now is obviously, particularly in COVID times, the building, which has been fundamental to what we do, and to that visible gathering of all sorts of different people, is a very different beast. We can't have a free-for-all everyone in the building, so we're really exploring how we use digital media. It's not come very naturally to us because we're so people and physically based. So there's a whole journey for us to go on now and working out how we make use of digital platforms effectively in some of these kind of issues of embracing diversity in the area.
Thank you, Dave. Nick?
As it stands at the moment, we haven't specifically engaged with communities. I think on the app we've got like a representation of people from across communities. We'd welcome engagement from any groups that could highlight the needs of any particular individuals from within those groups and welcome individuals to join the app. As it stands at the moment, the majority of our presentations are like in English. We do have a few in Welsh, but if any groups wanted to join and live stream any of their own activities, then of course we would welcome that as well. It's it for me.
Thank you, Nick. It's got 3 minutes to go, and we're down to the last question, I think, in the time that we've got to answer. So I'm going to start with Claire and then go to all three of you. So, a question from Andy: does the Act need altering in any way that could help the excellent projects like these? Claire, does the Act, Social Services and Wellbeing Act, need altering at all that would help your excellent projects?
The Act actually helps our organisation because it gives more flexibility, choice, it's more people-centred. And actually now, when we're writing proposals and going to funders, we can wrap everything we do around the Act. So just trying to sort of think of any specifics. I might have to get back to you on that one. I think we have managed to work it. At first, it was a very strange way of working, the what matters conversation and the change, and that's the only barrier, I think. When we're talking about a carers need assessment and a what matters, it can confuse carers. They don't understand that they've had many carers will say to us, we haven't had an assessment, but they have, but we're calling it under the new name of what matters. So that's been a bit of a thing. But when in the main, you can read and interpret that Act, and we can build services around it. So because it's so person-centred, it's actually worked well for us.
Brilliant. Okay, thank you, Claire. Dave and Hazel, does the Act need changing?
Confirming there, 'cause I'm not sure there's much I can think of in the Act that would need changing that would sort of directly impact on us. I mean, something I've picked up just sort of more widely in social care and social services is that I think there are different interpretations of co-production and different ways that's enacted in practice. And sort of the concept of sort of doing what matters to the individual, sometimes that ends up being more, is still kind of the list of this is what we can provide, do you want it or not, however much that tries to be a what matters conversation, if that makes sense. So I think that's sort of the bit where the sort of link between act and practice isn't quite as it could be. I would say it impacts on our service too much.
Yeah, the only thing I'd add, yeah, it's that classic thing, isn't it? It's not just about what's in a policy, it's how and whether it's practiced. And Wales has become a little bit famous for having brilliant policies. And then it's questionable whether they get kind of worked out. So there's a whole issue of, ultimately what's needed is culture change and culture change within what are quite often quite big bureaucratic organisations. So my suspicion is the issue and the challenge is not so much what's on paper, but how that then gets worked out in practice.
Right, fantastic, thank you. Nick, the last bit for you now. What does the Act need altering in any way?
Well, I'd agree with some of the things that Dave just said there. I think about application, and I'm certainly not going to pretend that I know the Act chapter and verse either, but I don't know what there's in there about sharing and organisations specifically, but I think that it would be a very good thing if it was organisations were compelled to share and to demonstrate that they have shared for the greater good. And I think that we spend a lot of time talking about sharing and not a lot of time actually doing it.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. And with those words, Nick, I'm going to bring the morning session of the third day to a close at Measure the Mountain Citizens Jury. So dyna diwedd sesiwn y bore, trydydd diwrnod ar Mesur y Mynydd. Diolch i chi gyd am gymryd rhan bore yma, a diolch am eich ymroddiad. Thank you to you all for taking part and so enthusiastically as well. Thank you very much, and best wishes. Diolch yn fawr, and we'll have a normal Zoom clap, shall we? Da iawn chi gyd, well done. Thank you very much.